attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to another IGDA Wednesday webinar. Thanks everybody for coming. I am Keith Fuller and I'll be doing the presentation today talking about emotional intelligence, what exactly that means and why it's important to you, whether you are in a leadership role, aspiring to one, or just want to have a better work environment. So let's see if we can get this thing going off. Yes, the session is being recorded. If you have questions, we do have the question pane, and I will do my best to make note of those as they come in and respond as best I can. Today we will have a 45-minute window for the presentation, and I'll try to fit in any questions we have at the end. Let's see if... All right. So briefly, looks like the formatting is going to be off on my monitor. That's awesome. So I'm a leadership consultant. I've actually been in the industry since '97, and I originally started off as a programmer. Oh, hang on. Looks like things are happening. Windows is being unhappy. Hang on a second here. Go to webinar. How about if we actually start that again? Okay. Sorry about that. I started off as a programmer in '97 and eventually became a design manager. I was in charge of a number of level designers and then a producer at Raven Software. So that's the background for my experience, starting from a very entry-level programmer all the way up to 70-plus person teams, multi-million-dollar budgets, those sorts of things. So that's the, keep in mind that's the lens through which I'm viewing these things when I talk about my own experiences and my desire to see other people having the best leadership possible in game development settings. So we will start off, what is emotional intelligence? What is this all about, Keith? So right here we have what I would consider not the most convenient kind of a mouthful of a definition. This comes from 7 Steps to Emotional Intelligence, and it is it's accurate, but it's I think a little unwieldy. So what I'm going to do is do a little bit of a tweak to that. We're going to instead use this second definition here. I think it's a little easier to grasp. So competencies and skills that are centering around emotion that drive leadership performance. So the seminal author in this realm is Daniel Goleman, and he came out with some research, some findings several years ago, started writing books, Emotional Intelligence being the first, and that really brought this area into the limelight. There have been a number of books, a lot of research that's been done in the area since, and I'll primarily be talking today from another book, not from Mr. Goleman, but we'll talk about those resources in a minute. So right here, the first one, Emotional Intelligence 2.0, is one that I think is a much better source of information in that it talks about the field of study here, emotional intelligence, from the standpoint of the workplace, from the standpoint of day-to-day relations. So it's more of a how-to daily life kind of a source of information, and as you can see at the top of the book, that's recommended by the Dalai Lama. So this is already the most important book I've ever had in a presentation, clearly. The second book here, 7 Steps to Emotional Intelligence, I confess haven't even finished this one yet, but what I'll tell you about it is it's more psychologically oriented, still accurate, still useful information to be sure. It is not as helpful, I don't think, in terms of how can I apply this in the workplace. It is, it's great if you're a fan of words like presupposition and neurolinguistics. Those are rampant pieces of verbiage in the book. So if you like those, go with the second book. I'll be talking primarily from this first one here. Okay, so we saw a definition. It's skills, it's competencies centering around emotions that drive leadership performance. Why does it even matter? So there are a few interesting tidbits, some studies that show up in a lot of the literature. One of them, and I can't even quote for you honestly where the source is, so I'm not going to hang too much on this, but it gives you a feel for where we're coming from. According to the authors of Emotional Intelligence 2.0, people with high IQ outperform, so we're talking about intelligence quotient there, right? So this is IQ. Theoretically, there's an objective measure of this. It's a number that we can apply to people through various tests. So you can measure high IQ, low IQ, but this is purely intelligence quotient we're talking about. So people with high IQ outperform people with average IQ 20% of the time. People with average IQ outperform high IQ 70% of the time. What? Wait, what? That doesn't even make sense. High IQ gets outperformed by average IQ 70% of the time? So this is the sort of finding that generated a lot of people looking into this realm. How does emotion play into this? If it's not just intelligence that has to do with problem solving and these sorts of things, what is the distinguishing factor? Oh, by the way, I got a question from Alexis who was asking, will the PowerPoint be shared at the end? Yes, well, the entire broadcast is being recorded, so you'll definitely be able to see that up on YouTube at some point. And if I'm clever, I can share the PowerPoint on SlideShare at some point. If I haven't done that in the next 48 hours or so, feel free to send me an email or what have you and reach out to me to remind me to do that. So the emotional intelligence realm started getting researched when people realized, wait, IQ is not the sole distinguishing factor for success in problem-solving areas. So then what is? And that's where this entire field of study came from. Another one of the findings that's talked about in the primary book I'm using here that I'm referencing, they say about 36% of people tested can accurately identify their own emotions as they occur. So what does that mean? So if you're put into a situation where there's some sort of trigger, something is eliciting an emotional response in you, about a third of people tested can accurately identify what that emotion is in real time while it's happening. So 2/3 of the time you've got emotions going on and you aren't necessarily even able to identify what those are, much less have a feel for what to do about them, what impact they're having on you. So why is emotion such a key point here to keep in mind? Well, so here's this fantastic image, which I may or may not have taken a picture of out of the Emotional Intelligence 2.0 book earlier this morning, but it paints the picture beautifully. Here's your brain. Here's where all of your sensory input is coming in. That's what you're hearing your coworkers say, what you're seeing in terms of body language and those sorts of things. Before it can get to your frontal lobe, where you're going to start making rational decisions based on that input, it has to go through your emotional center. So it's absolutely accurate to say your emotions can and do hijack your rational thoughts frequently. And there are times when we're more aware of this than others. I have small children, so I can attest to the fact that there are definitely times that I know my rational thinking is being hijacked by my emotions. But in something like a workplace setting, in a professional environment, it's not always super clear as to when that may be happening and to what extent. That does not, however, mean that your emotions aren't real. They do happen, and you can't prevent them. In a professional environment, we're frequently called upon to manage our behaviors right? You don't just immediately get angry and start shouting profanities and throwing things. At least I hope you don't. The ideal situation is that you don't. But just because you are called upon to behave professionally, quote unquote, which largely means subduing your emotional reactions as far as outwardly, doesn't mean your emotions don't exist. They do exist. They're impacting your thoughts, and that doesn't change what you're feeling. Just to say, hey, act professionally, or just because someone's not yelling doesn't mean they aren't angry. Right? People are being emotional, and it's impacting your thought processes. So a couple of resources that I will toss your way here with regards to this very idea. The Righteous Mind is a book by John Haidt. It primarily addresses these two concepts that we're interested in here, which is emotions versus rational thought. The analogy that he uses there really gets carried on by Chip and Dan Heath in the book Switch, which is mainly about change management in general, but they talk a lot about the idea of, and here's their imagery, it's the rational rider on an emotional elephant. And they also add the element of the path, that is the third ingredient to how you wind up behaving, how you can change. But really they talk about, look, you can have all of the best decisions, all the best thought processes in the world, but you are a rider on top of a 6-ton elephant of emotion. And if your emotions decide that something is going to happen, good luck to the rider trying to change the elephant's mind. So these are a couple of great books to read on the subject, and they really drive home the importance of emotional impact and sometimes using that to your advantage. A great example that they talk about in the book Switch, they refer to somebody who was in charge of vendor relations. They worked at a large factory, multiple locations, and their company was buying gloves for their workers. This person was charged with finding ways to lower costs, so they started doing some investigating, and they found out that this company across their various locations, the various factories, was purchasing something like 200 different kinds of gloves from different vendors. Sometimes they're purchasing the same glove from different places and paying 5 times as much. So this person was trying desperately to bring this to the attention of their management, wasn't getting anywhere. Who wants to talk about gloves? So what the guy did was went out and procured a pair of each of the 200+ types of gloves, put a price tag on them, and dumped them all out on a conference room table at corporate headquarters and invited the leadership to come look. Now, this guy was giving them report after report and talking numbers and prices and what have you, but as soon as people saw an enormous pile of gloves on a conference room table, they had an immediate emotional response. Oh my gosh, what's going on here? What's the deal with this? And as soon as they start looking at the price tags on them, they're going, wait, what? So now he got people involved. Before, they're making rational decisions. Gloves, who cares? I'm not interested. Now there's an emotional response involved. And suddenly people were interested, and they wanted to be involved and make an impact on the decision making. So that's an example of somebody using knowledge of emotional impact on rational thought processes. In the book Emotional Intelligence 2.0, there's this very simple, and this is one of the reasons I really like it, there's this very simple matrix here talking about the competencies involved in emotional intelligence, which, by the way, you'll frequently see abbreviated as EQ. So IQ is talking about intelligence quotient, emotional intelligence, they'll abbreviate as EQ, talking about emotional quotient effectively. So these are the 4 aspects we're going to get into during today's presentation. They're the 2 that we'll talk about first, the personal competencies. And these are self-awareness, so what's going on internally, self-management, how you can manage what's going on internally. And then looking at those in relation to others is the next step, with social awareness and then relationship management. And I can tell you that these are definitely things that if you haven't experienced them yet, as far as differentiating factors in how other people in your work environment behave, if you haven't experienced these yet, you will, especially after today, because it's going to be top of mind and you'll be thinking about it more. There are people that I have worked with, and probably many of you have as well. There are people who seem to have no idea of the impact that their words and actions have on others. They may enter a room mouth first, and they're always they're quick to speak and slow to listen and those sorts of things, and you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, does this person not even realize what their words and actions are doing to everybody else? That's the sort of awareness and the sort of management that we're talking about, and you've probably seen how that can impact communicating with others. That person probably does not carry as much weight with regards to their input, the level of respect, as somebody else who exhibits better awareness and management of social relationships. So when you cast it in that light, you can already see how this concept of emotional intelligence and these competencies really do have a serious impact on your work environment and other people's behaviors and ultimately your success as a leader. Imagine that person who enters the room mouth first trying to lead a group of people, right? That's going to be a different scenario from somebody who exhibits a lot more awareness. So the first of these areas, this is a personal competence, improving self-awareness. Now, each of these 4 areas we're going to talk about, there's a ton of things we could talk about, and it's very easy. I think it's comparatively easy to go out and just Google some of these terms and come up with any number of suggestions. Certainly the book that I'm primarily referencing here today has a number of them, I think more than a dozen for each of these 4 competences that we're talking about. I really want to distill some of those and sort of lump a few together, and these are the first 3 that we'll talk about. So when it comes to self-awareness, so this is the ability to accurately perceive your emotions in the moment, right? So while they're happening, not just think about it after you get home, right? But you're accurately perceiving your emotions in the moment and understanding your tendencies across situations. So what are you likely to do? How are you likely to feel in certain situations? So with that in mind, first thing I'd say is get objective feedback from somebody else, right? So this is the idea of objective versus subjective is really important here. When you're getting objective feedback from somebody else, folks who are outside of your mind and outside of your own emotions are always going to see things you don't. This is why executive coaching is a thing, even for CEOs. Currently, I think the executive chairman of Google, Eric Schmidt, one-time CEO of Google, he even said, everybody needs a coach. I have a coach. It's the CEO of Google talking. And he said the main reason is one thing you're never as good at as somebody else is understanding how others see you. So getting objective feedback from somebody else, if that's family, if it's a friend, if it's a trusted coworker, that's critical for improving your own self-awareness. Now the second one is talking about subjective observation. So this is what you think, what you feel. And critical here is the word record, recording subjective observations. So an example is keeping a journal throughout the day or something you record at the end of the day about here were situations that occurred today. Here's the situation that just occurred 5 minutes ago that I know had an emotional impact, made me happy, made me angry, made me frustrated. Writing about that situation, even just a couple sentences. Here's the time of day, here's who was involved, here's how I wound up feeling. This is something that once you start doing it is going to have an impact on even your ability to observe yourself. Right now you may not be aware of even 2 or 3 noteworthy emotional instances throughout any given day. But once you start doing this on a regular basis, writing it down, thinking about it more often, you'll become more aware of these things because it's top of mind. And the third item here, knowing your triggers. So this is really going to come into play for the next few points. In terms of self-awareness, knowing what sets you off is really key. Something that is always going to make you happy, always going to make you upset in some way. Certainly there have been people that I have worked with in the past where they may want to come into the room and hand me free money. It doesn't matter, because just the fact that they're the one coming into the room, in my head I'm already going, oh gosh, this guy again. And probably everybody here is familiar with having experienced something along those lines at some point. The impact of just seeing somebody or just hearing certain words or memories trigger these sorts of things as well. When somebody starts playing the theme song to a favorite video game from years past, you're immediately sent back in time and you're thinking happier thoughts or what have you. Right? Knowing your triggers is an important piece of self-awareness. So that comes into recording those observations we talked about earlier. You'll be able to start piecing together, hey, wait a minute, every time somebody starts talking about office furniture, suddenly I get really bored. Imagine that. So this will help you in the next area, which is self-management. One thing, I'll back up a second because I have this personal story I love to tell. So in terms of self-awareness, triggers, knowing your triggers. Long before I came into the video game industry, I was working at a restaurant, teenager, and my job was clearing tables. Right? It was a pretty nice restaurant, but my job was pretty much at the end of the food chain. I was just the guy who walks around with the tub full of dirty dishes all the time. We had a restaurant manager by the name of Jay, and Jay was a mover. Always moving, always had something to say to people, and the reason that he was a manager in a high-stress restaurant environment is because he was always getting people to do things, and whatever you did was never good enough, and you didn't do it frequently enough. I kid you not, I went on my day off. I went to this restaurant after having worked there for months and months and months. Went to this restaurant, and I'm eating lunch with a friend, so I'm now a paying customer. I'm not on the clock. I see Jay at the end of the restaurant come into view, and I immediately put my head down and start eating my food faster. Just from the tendency of, oh my gosh, it's Jay, I better find something to do. Hurry, 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 look busy. And that was a trigger for me. It came to be, man, every time I see Jay, I better get busy, or he's going to chew my head off. So, knowing your triggers. Sometimes it's Jay. Okay, self-management. So the first step here is really talking about physical self-care kind of issues. So breathe. Okay, seems like we shouldn't need a whole lot of input here. The tendency in a lot of situations, especially if you sit and stare at a monitor for hours on end, is to be breathing pretty shallow, not taking very deep breaths, not filling your lungs, not using your diaphragm, those sorts of things. When you do, that immediately has a noteworthy impact on brain activity. Your brain is where the emotions are happening, rational thought is happening, brain gets more oxygen. This is a good thing. If you're ever in a situation where, oh my gosh, I'm angry, I'm upset, I'm happy, I need to calm down and think clearly for a moment, just stopping to take a deep breath has an actual physiological effect. Similarly, sleeping. Again, talking to game developers, this is something that may seem like a no-brainer, but got to talk about sleep. Getting enough sleep is critical for your brain to function properly, period. Full stop, you need a lot of sleep. True, it matters, the numbers are different for different people, but I think you and I both know when you aren't getting enough sleep, and especially when you're doing it frequently, for days on end, it has an impact. And the reality is that numerous studies show it's having an impact on your ability to think clearly and perform long before you're aware of it. So make sure you're getting enough sleep. Eating, similarly, keeping your blood sugar level up. Your brain absorbs an enormous percentage of the calories that come into your body. It's just ridiculous. So it's very important for you to make sure you're eating properly, and this may mean that you can't just eat Doritos and drink Mountain Dew. There have to be other elements to your nutrition involved, and this isn't just mom telling you to eat your broccoli. This is somebody who cares about your performance at work and you being fulfilled in your workplace, leading people well, telling you, look, your blood sugar level, how much energy you have based on what you're taking in nutrition-wise, is important to the people around you. So breathe, sleep, eat, do these things well. These elements play a critical role in your self-management. Waiting. There are a couple different examples of this that you've probably heard before and probably seem pretty lame, but they're legitimate for good reasons. Somebody is in a meeting with you and they start to get irate. Maybe there's yelling involved, there's finger pointing, there's blaming, any of these sorts of things that make tensions rise. If you can just wait when you are aware that your own emotions are getting involved, just wait. You've heard count to 10, right? Probably not the best idea if, say, a coworker is yelling at you in a meeting. Don't just sit there and slowly count to 10 in front of them. My guess would be that the emotion level in the room would rise in a bad way if you did that. But there are other things you could do. An example that somebody used was, anytime I go into a meeting, I bring a drink. It's a cup of water, it's a cup of coffee, whatever. And if I feel myself getting emotionally intense, I'll just take a drink. It's not bizarre, it's not out of place, and very few people are going to expect you to respond quickly while drinking something. So that's just an example of waiting, giving a chance for your rational mind to take over from the emotional center. A longer-term example, you've heard sleep on it, right? You got a big decision to make, just sleep on it. Go home, get a good night's sleep, come back, make the decision. That, again, not only gives you a chance to think about the details longer, but gives a chance for the emotional intensity to subside so that you can make a rational decision. And then third, we talked about this briefly earlier, the idea of objective feedback. So find someone who is not emotionally invested in the issue at hand, the decision that needs to be made, whatever it is, and ask them, what do you think about the office furniture? Should we do standing desks? Should we get chairs, stools, sit on the floor? What do you think? This is a way for you to self-manage because you are aware that you're involved, you're emotionally involved in the situation, and may not be able to think through things clearly, make a rational judgment. So find somebody who doesn't have skin in the game, as it were, and ask for their viewpoint. Okay, so now we're into the outward-facing competencies. So the social aspect. We talked about self-awareness and self-management. So you're aware of what's going on internally, and you're able to manage it better. This is the social side of this. Okay, so this is what really comes into play when you're in a work environment, in a team environment, especially when you are a leader. So the various aspects of emotional intelligence that we're talking about here are critical for what's called transformational leadership. There are two somewhat competing schools of thought or types of leadership, transactional versus transformational. Transactional is very much carrots and sticks, right? I will lead you with a goal. Hey, you get a royalty check if you ship game on time, or I will punish you with something negative if you do something wrong. Right? Ship the game on time or you're fired. Right? Carrots and sticks. That's transactional leadership. Transformational leadership, which has been proven to be much more effective, but also create much more productive employees, is an example of that is using motivation instead of beating somebody with a stick or offering them a carrot. And that comes in the emotional intelligence, the social aspects really come into play there when you're talking about transformational leadership, influencing others. So that's why these things we're talking about here are so important, because they are critical to transformational leadership. So social awareness. What do you need to be aware of with others? I absolutely had to put this down. It seems ridiculous. Well, of course you're improving social awareness, Keith. You're saying pay attention. I wouldn't have to say it if enough people would just do it. So when someone else is talking to you, you need to be aware of what they are saying and not just be waiting to say whatever you want to say. You've got to hear what they're saying. You know, Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, his famous thing is seek first to understand, then be understood. So you can't do that if you aren't paying attention to what the person is saying. And also how they're saying it. Now, admittedly, this gets trickier if you're on a distributed team, you work primarily via email or something. Text is about the worst way to communicate ever. So whenever you can get it, video chat or preferably being in the same room with someone, interpreting body language is a critical part of understanding what people are saying. And again, these are areas where you can go out and just Google these topics and find some books, find some blogs. There's all sorts of information here, but I'm bringing them up because they are key ingredients to being socially aware, being aware of the relationships around you and how they're being impacted. So for instance, the guy we talked about earlier who enters the room mouth first and is always talking and doesn't realize what impact they're having on others, that person probably thinks, well, all I have to do is say what I have to say. It's clearly more important than anything else. Somebody else might want to talk, so I'll have to wait until they shut up so I can say what's obviously more important. Right? They aren't paying attention to others. And they're probably also exhibiting body language that says, I don't really listen to anybody else. So something that you need to be aware of is, yes, you need to be paying attention and interpreting others' body language, but you have body language of your own. Typical things that people talk about, how you stand, whether you're facing someone or not, do you cross your arms, how somebody actually smiles, is it a real smile, is it phony? These are things that if you are looking for them, you can pick up on them without even having to go out and hunt down a bunch of books. Just the fact that you know you need to be examining these is enough for you to pay attention to them in others and start to learn. And the last point here, stop interrupting. For goodness sake, just because the other person reaches a period doesn't mean that's your chance to interject whatever you have to say. Make sure that you're understanding somebody else. Don't interrupt them in the middle of the sentence. Give them a chance to get everything out. Think about what they're saying, and then speak yourself. So these seem so basic, but I wouldn't be saying them if it weren't for the fact that they tend to be critically absent in a lot of situations. Okay, so the fourth area of the matrix of competencies. So relationship management. There are a number of things that we could talk about here. A lot of things coming from the books that I've referenced, but I don't think anything is as important as discussing the concept of empathy. So what's empathy about? This is the idea of understanding and demonstrating appreciation for somebody else's emotions. Especially when you're a leader, the most important thing you can do with the people around you is to connect with them as people. They aren't just employees, they aren't just an artist, a programmer. These are human beings, and they will perform better, love their job more, put out better work faster, be more attached to their job, their project, their company, when they feel a connection with the people around them, especially with their boss. The single most important relationship that any employee has in the company is with their boss. It's the biggest reason why anybody leaves a company, if they have a crummy relationship with their supervisor. So that's why empathy, especially for leaders, is so important. So the piece of information I'll toss out here, I would have loved to show off this 3-minute video that I'll tell you about, but I was desperately afraid of trying to embed a video in here and show it over the webinar software. I was pretty sure it would probably create a Singularity or Skynet or something. So I'll just tell you about the video. It's by Brené Brown. And it's on empathy. So if you were to Google Brené, B-R-E-N-E, Brown, and empathy, you'll find this 3-minute video about empathy. And she breaks it down beautifully as the importance of it, what it looks like, what the difference is between empathy and sympathy, and why that matters. So a classic takeaway from the video, and as soon as she said it, as soon as I first heard that, I went, oh wow, I do that all the time. You think you're being empathetic towards somebody. You think you're really being part of the solution as opposed to part of the problem. They say something, and your first response, the first words that come out of your mouth are, at least, right? Like, oh man, I can't believe I broke my leg getting out of a car yesterday. At least you have a leg. Right? Those sorts of things. Not actually empathy. And most of the time, not actually helpful. You're trying to kind of put the silver lining on a situation as opposed to actually validating where this person's coming from. So the 4 ingredients that she talks about in this video, ingredients for empathy, are perspective taking. Okay, so that's recognizing that someone else's perspective, whether it's in line with yours or not, is truth to them. Okay, so it doesn't matter. You know, the term the phrase you've maybe heard is the map isn't the terrain. And if you're holding out a map, it may represent the terrain that you're seeing, but it isn't actually the terrain, but it represents it. Same thing with somebody else's feelings and their perspective. Whatever they think, whatever they feel, that is truth to them. That is their reality. So you need to take that perspective and honor it. Staying out of judgment is the second element to being empathetic towards someone else. Really hard, especially, again, parent of small children. One of my kids does something dumb and hurts themselves. It's very hard to stay out of judgment. Well, I told you so. This is why we tell you not to jump off of moving trains. Okay, I don't actually let my children jump off of moving trains, but it's something that they would probably try. And were they to do so, I would probably be judgmental towards them rather than remotely empathetic. So staying out of judgment, critical to demonstrating empathy. A third element, recognizing emotion in others. Okay, so this goes back to the awareness that we were talking about, being socially aware. Recognizing some people aren't very, they aren't vocal, they aren't very outgoing, but there are going to be signs when somebody has an emotional response to something. So being able to recognize that, that's a key part to empathy. And then the fourth, and I think this is probably the most difficult part and where this falls apart for most people, communicating the recognition of their emotion. So, you know, it may not be somebody says, you know what, my dog died. I'm not actually a dog person, but I appreciate the fact that that is a big, big deal. When your pet dies, that's a big deal. And I might just say, you know what, I don't even know how to respond to that, but I appreciate the fact that you would say that, and I realize it's a big deal for you. You know, that's recognizing the emotion in somebody else, and it's communicating it, even if you don't necessarily share their viewpoint or their source of feelings. Communicating that recognition, validating, you know what, it is absolutely okay for you to be happy, scared, irate, whatever it is. So those are the key elements for today that we're going to talk about with regards to these 4 competencies that really comprise the concept of emotional intelligence. So to go back, emotional intelligence is a huge factor in problem solving, in success in leadership and in team environments. And emotional intelligence is an array of skills, of competencies regarding how you are aware of and how you manage emotions such that you can solve problems, perform successfully, have quality leadership. And those start with being aware of your own emotions. There are a lot of things to talk about here. Managing your own emotions, finding ways to help the rational rider on your emotional elephant do the right things, and then being aware of those impacts on others and managing relationships with others. So those are the key components of emotional intelligence. And we have a couple minutes before I have to get off the line here. If there are any sort of questions that you have on any of these topics, happy to entertain them. And I don't actually have any queued up, but if somebody somewhere is typing feverishly, then I want to give them an opportunity. Okay, we've got a question here from Dante. How can a project manager deal with an egotistical person who refuses to listen to others? I've never worked with such a person, Dante, so I can't help you. Oh man, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. Dealing with an egotistical person who refuses to listen to others. So there's actually a fantastic book that really plays off of what we've talked about here today called Difficult Conversations. And I probably should have included a link to it because it's such a great resource. How to have difficult conversations. A few of the key things that they talk about in this book, and this comes from, the Harvard Negotiation Project, which is an academic setting that did a ton of research on these sorts of interactions. A few of the key takeaways from their book. One of which is understanding the distinction between impact and intent. So this is, you may mean to have such and such an intent. You may mean to say something really nice to somebody, but the impact it has on them may be completely different. And so it's important to realize that there's a distinction between intent and impact to begin with, okay? And then that plays into the next takeaway that I got from this book, which is when you need to have a difficult conversation, and in the case of an egotistical person who refuses to listen to others, most of your conversations will be difficult. You need to be able to kind of step outside of that situation and describe it from a third-person perspective, from an objective perspective. So it's not, I did this and you did that. It's, here's where we are. And recognizing that everybody has a contribution to that. So I may have said something, you may have done something else. Everybody has a contribution. And being able to phrase that in an objective way is critical to starting the conversation. So there's no blame. We're not blaming anybody. We're just describing the situation objectively and recognizing that there are two parts to that, my contributions and yours. And realizing in those contributions, something you said or did, that there was an intent and an impact, and they're probably different. And so starting with an objective description of the situation with egotistical person, and then saying, now here was my intent. Is that actually, how it came across? Asking the question. That's not blaming anybody. That's not accusing anyone of anything. But it's opening up the discussion for somebody, for egotistical person X, to then say, oh, well, this is what I got from that, right? So what it does is it puts you on a level playing field. No one's accusing anyone. No one is morally superior or inferior, but it's starting the conversation around the events. And it's doing so in a way that that doesn't start off on some sort of negative foot, where nobody feels like they have to defend themselves, right? Once somebody starts getting defensive, then there are all sorts of issues. So you're trying to start conversations in a way that aren't going to develop negative emotions right off the bat. So I realize that's kind of a broad answer. I could probably do better if we had specifics to talk about, but this is clearly not the time or the place to do so. So I hope that information was of use to you, Dante. Thanks for asking. So I apologize that I'm now out of time here. I wish I could take some more questions. If you have any, you've got my email. Feel free to send them my way, and happy to help. And by all means, continue to tune into the Wednesday webinars here. The fourth Wednesday of next month, we will have another one on leadership and production. Thanks very much for your attendance, and feel free to look this up on YouTube. We'll post the recording at some point soon. Thanks, everybody.